his card.
2008.
Just a little under you.
Yes. With stories for you.
Lost in these uneducated blues.
Welcome. 2008. 4,050 or so stories. And this is one of them. May I introduce you to Deb Biancotti?
Biancotti.
Oh, I got it right.
You didn't do your research. You
No,
should
it's the
check
pronunciation. I lived in Italy and I would still get it right.
Goodness gracious.
So Deb has come a long way. She actually lives beside me, so I have to be really polite. This will be a suck-up interview.
Yeah, for both of us.
Yeah. She's got a DA in.
Oh, God.
So when did you come to Chippendale?
I think it was about January 1997.
Right.
The last millennium.
Wow.
I know. And we rented initially. So I was renting that house. And then the owners announced they were selling it. So we were like, oh, we'll buy it from you, us crazy kids. So we did. We bought it in 99. So that's when I became a permanent resident.
Right. I think you show real backbone. You haven't done any renovations?
No, I know, but gosh, it's just
I'm not
crying
being
out
critical.
for them. No, it needs it though. The floor's falling apart, the roof's falling apart, literally leaking. So it's a
Right.
total mess. So brace yourself.
So thanks. I'll just stay on the front step from now on.
Yeah, okay.
What made you come here and what made you buy?
In 97, my partner was studying medicine. So actually the main...
I remember him.
Yeah, do you remember him? Yeah, he graduated. He's not a doctor now though, but he was studying
Struck off?
medicine. No, left.
Right.
Didn't like the chaos of the industry. So we were close to Sydney Uni. So that was actually the only decider, was that it was close to the university and it had that beautiful big spacious front room. That
Yeah.
and that was kind of nice for this part of the world.
Yeah.
And that was it. So why did we buy? It came up. Do you know, it was almost laziness. Like it was
Yeah.
easier to buy the place and find somewhere else to live.
Yeah.
It gets under your skin, Chippendale, I think.
What do you like about where you live?
I like I'm a city person. Like I grew up in North Queensland in like all that wide open space and sugarcane fields. And
Stop everything.
Sorry, I know I'm a foreigner. I know I speak English pretty well, but and it just freaks me out to actually think about going back to a place like that. Like I can't do open space, man. It's really creepy. So I like how close everything is. I can walk to everything that I need. I can walk to a supermarket. I can walk to fantastic restaurants. I don't have to leave Chippendale to get everything done that I want done, apart from those renovations that are coming.
Do you own a car?
No, I don't. No.
It's interesting, isn't it? I don't either.
Yeah.
Why don't you own a car?
I don't want to. Like, I've never enjoyed driving, and by now I'm so out of touch. I've done so little driving as an adult that I've actually learned to drive about 3 times because I never do it in between. Like, in between suddenly needing to drive, I've never driven a car. So I don't want to own a car. Like, if I can walk everywhere, what do I need a car for?
Okay.
I feel like the theme is laziness. Is that the theme we're getting? Like, I never bothered to move out. I never bothered to drive a car.
So tell me what you don't like.
About Chippendale.
Chippendale, not about me.
And the neighbours. I found lockdown was initially pretty hard because everyone was doing business calls at home, on their balconies and in the street, and that was tedious. Like, I don't want to listen to anyone else's phone calls. Take that shit inside, you know? Like, so that bothered me. At that point, it just felt too claustrophobic.
Was that the first lockdown or both of them?
That was the first one. I think we've all adjusted now. Like,
It didn't happen so much, I think, in the second one.
I think people learned a new set of manners.
Yeah.
I think we all became more aware of how our sound
Yeah.
affects each other. Oh, and that's the other thing I hate is people idling in their cars in our street. Did you know that's illegal? That's actually illegal to idle in a car for excessive periods of time.
Look, I'm just a short guy, but it drives me to rage. And I say, you're just a short guy, walk on.
Yeah.
But they stay there
Yeah.
for 30,
Yeah.
50 minutes.
What are they doing? Like, what do you need the car on for? You can have the AC on
There's
without
this thing called a window.
Yeah.
And you know, even
Just go
this
away.
morning,
Yeah.
when it's t-shirt weather,
Yeah.
there's somebody in this big four-wheel drive, windows up with the aircon on.
Like-
what is that?
Like, go for a walk, you weirdo.
So when
Honestly.
you say it's illegal,
It is. It's illegal to. It's an environmental law. It's illegal to keep a car engine running or idling for an excessive period of time. Which is, if you document it and photograph it, etc., you've got the evidence.
right? See me after class, because I'm going to put up a sign.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'm going to be the enforcer.
Yeah, I literally
Because-
started printing stuff out to put on people's
Did you?
windshields. Yeah,
Oh gosh.
yeah.
I'm so glad we're talking.
Finally, after all these years.
we're starting up the anti-car idling.
Yeah, Chippo community, anti-car idling.
swines.
We hate you people. Get out of our hood.
So there's a council election coming up in December, and then who knows when a federal election is coming up. I don't think they even know, but then there's a state election, I think, God help us, in 2 years.
Okay.
Do you take any interest in all that stuff, politics?
Oh, it drives me to despair. I'm really hopeless with politics. I know I should be interested, but it's just so depressing because it only ever seems to be bad news, right? So I should take more of an interest. I'm not very active politically, I confess.
Why should you?
Well, because it affects all of our lives, right? And I think that's what the politics during the pandemic has really taught, even people like me who are trying to maintain a certain amount of indifference, was that the decisions that are made by stupid people at the top will actually affect your life. Like the decisions about which vaccines to put their money into, the decisions about letting people off cruise ships and letting them disperse through the whole country. Those sort of decisions actually end up with all of us in lockdown, with people losing their businesses, with people losing their jobs, with the gig economy, which is a lot of people who are doing tiny little piecemeal jobs here and there, just trying to survive and leaving Sydney. Ultimately, a lot of people I know have left Sydney because they can't afford to stay because their gigs dried up during the pandemic. So, and that's all politics. Those decisions are coming from politics.
Well, in the first session of 2008, we spoke to one of our neighbours, and he had 14 people working for him here in Sydney and 2 on the Gold Coast. He supplied the entertainment for 3 cruise lines.
Oh, wow. Oh, God.
And he could go anywhere.
Wow.
He had a child or 2 children in private schools. Now he's just finished a 3-day course to hold a stop and go sign.
No.
He has no staff.
Oh, my God.
And he says he's just got enough to pay for one of his children to finish school. And he's in his 50s. It's a really interesting story. I think the thing that's coming out of my discussion with you is, and with the other people, is so much happens behind closed doors. Private, intense struggles, tragedies. And just because I see him cleaning his car and he's gone back to driving Uber,
Oh, wow.
yeah, with his car, it doesn't mean that all is well.
Yeah.
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 It's a big thing to go and knock on someone's door. So one final question. Are you going to stay?
Well, that's the plan. Well, let's hope I get that roof in, because if I can't replace my roof, I'm not sure.
You wait till you see what we do with this interview. You'll be saying things you never said.
Oh, really? Just dub it all in later.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks for coming all this way.
No, my pleasure. See you back.
We have Matthew Doan. Welcome, you've come so far
I know, I
from
had to
Chippendale.
walk straight down the street.
Thank you for coming so far. I hear another country in your voice.
Yeah, I get that a lot. When I drink heavy, it turns into Irish, even though I'm not Irish. So I grew up in Minnesota.
You're on the run or something, are you?
Well, oh gosh, that's a whole nother story. I used to get that when I was younger. But I moved here about 11 years ago because my wife's Australian. Her whole family's from Sydney. And I've moved around a lot, especially when I was growing up. So I used to get that as a question sometimes if we were in the Witness Protection Agency, because every year we'd move somewhere else. Which would have been great, but nothing that interesting.
So I look at you with continual curiosity because you're an anaesthetist and a researcher.
Yep.
What's the balance? Is it more of one or the other? How do they intersect?
No, that's a good question. So I trained in the US in medicine, finished up, was an anesthetist there, and then came over here. And it was just more of a career choice and sort of a logical choice, I guess. I think in the end, when it comes to being a doctor, once you start practicing, it can get a bit routine. And especially as you get a bit more senior, both in age and also in skills, you do tend to get a bit more repetitive. And for me, research was a way to keep it interesting. But even before I got into medicine, I was in public health. And I think that's kind of what twigged for me as being important, because I felt like I could do more, maybe, impactfully, by doing research and trying to forward everybody's clinical practice instead of just mine. At least I try. It doesn't always work, but I try.
So how long have you been in Chippendale?
5 years.
And at the same hospital all that time?
Very monogamous, yeah, just one hospital.
How's it going?
Right now or just in general?
Right now and in general?
Right now it's okay. At this point in time, with the way things are going with sort of the pandemic and whatnot, it's getting a little bit more calm. We're still under a lot of stress, but we're starting to kind of eyeball not getting back to normal, but getting back to doing what we're supposed to do, which is take care of everybody else. But there's a lot of backlog. I mean, there's so many people that have just been not left out in the community, but just kind of holding on, and we're just trying to figure out how to catch up on everything. So on that end, there is a lot of stress. We've had a lot of people that haven't had a break in, a year and a half, or like me, I hadn't had a vacation in about a year and a half and was just getting ready to have one. So it's been about 3 years.
Oh, that's tough.
I mean, it is, but I think it's perspective too. I think when I look around at friends who don't have a career, don't have a job, or worried about putting food on the table, had family or friends that have gotten sick, we're lucky.
Yeah. Has the virus had an impact on, I guess, you personally and at home or at work? Is it, other than the fact that it's taken priority over other?
I think so. I know so. It's had a lot of different effects. It's put a lot of things in perspective, just for me, long term. It's changed a lot of the way we work. Sometimes, I think, in a good way, it's taught us to be a little bit more flexible and also made us realize what things we can do that maybe we couldn't do before. It's also made us realize how hard it is to adapt and pivot. Health systems are not as flexible as they need to be when you get something like this current situation that is evolving, month to month. We can move, but not that fast. It's like a big barge.
That was really interesting. I didn't quite catch it. You said something like, we've learnt we can do things differently, or what? Give us an example.
Well, there's been a lot of opportunity, things that we've been trying to do in the past, but there hasn't really been a motivation. The trouble with things like medicine is you do things consistently to try and maintain a standard, but sometimes holding on to a standard can be fighting evolution, and it's really hard to differentiate.
Look, I don't know anything about it, but it makes sense that no matter where you are, you've got to evolve and learn.
Yeah. So even little things like working on how to have meetings by teleconferencing. It's something that we've had the capacity to do. I mean, if you just look at, and I joke about it all the time, we still use pagers. And the only people I know that still use pagers are doctors and drug dealers from the 1980s. So, we haven't really evolved and kept up with a lot of the opportunities that are out there. So even just learning how to adapt to bring people together, to have meetings, that's something that we always had the potential to do, but it was that whole idea of if it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, now we had an opportunity to capitalize on it. And even things for patients, not having patients, especially in a place like New South Wales or Australia, where some people have to go really long distances just to come in for a visit. We've really pushed to try and adapt so they can video call in or phone call in. And
That makes so much sense. I lived at Forbes, which is 5 or 6 hours by car, and to see a specialist, I had to come down here as a child and then go back there. It was hugely disruptive.
yeah,
And it's only the virus that's loosened things up. Matt?
I think it's just the pressures of it. I think it's forced a lot of things. Some things we've adapted well to, other things we're still trying to figure out. But, I think that's one of the things that it's given us, is that need to adapt to sort of loosen things up a little bit, so it's allowed us to evolve. In some cases just in response to what's going on, but in other cases just because people are willing to say, all right, let's give it a try.
And what's been the impact on your research?
It's mostly stopped. A lot of the stuff that I do has to deal with, patients and having things that are a little bit more consistent and dependable and reliable. You've got to know what the workflow is, and that's all just completely stopped. So I've furloughed a lot of my staff and kept them at home to try and keep them safe. We're just kind of eyeballing the potential to get things back up and running. But yeah.
And you're an how do you say it?
You can say anesthesiologist if you want. It's
Oh.
a little longer, but it rolls a little better.
Anesthesiologist. I did it. So I've been under the knife and so on, and I don't know what you do, but is it you must have stress.
I think so, but I know so. There's definitely stress in what we do. There's a healthy level of stress. I remember I read, I can't remember what it was, but it talked about how there's a certain level of stress that gets you engaged, and that's really important. And it also kind of keeps things interesting and exciting. Too much stress and you fall apart. Too little and it becomes a bit mundane. I definitely think the more experience you get, the more you can sort of take on a bit more trauma that you're faced with without it overwhelming you. But yeah, it can be a little bit challenging sometimes.
Do you monitor yourself, or is there some system or protocol for people to keep an eye on each other and support each other?
The answer is yes to both of those, but we don't do it really well. It's one of these things where you're meant to take care of yourself if you're too tired or things are getting a bit overwhelming. But then at the same time, even though the system will always come back and say, if things are that bad, we're there for you, it's not really that well set up. And I don't mean just my hospital, I mean just in general. So we tend to work ourselves a little too hard because we just don't want to let the system down or the patients down. I think we're getting better as a profession at saying it's okay to be tired, it's okay to be stressed. We expect you to, but even just coming up with a support network that is a bit, I don't want to say accessible, but people access more readily. We're still trying to get to that. Doctors make the worst patients, so.
Yeah. I spoke to somebody, she's a policewoman, and she said they still do 12-hour shifts, and she's a mother of a young child. And I said, well, the last couple of hours, you must be at 50% efficiency, surely. She said, yeah. That stuff seems basic to me. I don't know why you'd get anybody working 12-hour shifts, but does that happen in medicine?
Oh, longer, like much longer. It's actually something I was doing research on, a project that I just finished, which was looking at fatigue. And we compare ourselves to the airline industry a lot because they've got, I think, a lot more protocols and standards in place because of the sort of high risk overall. So I've started looking at some of what they do to sort of measure not just fatigue, but your own decline in skills as you get more and more tired. And it is pretty shocking. But there's always this balance, and the balance is you've got a system that needs staffing, You've got patients that have certain needs. You've got yourself that has certain needs, and everything tries to sort of accommodate it, but it's never a perfect marriage. So there's always little sacrifices, and the thing that tends to get sacrificed the most is our well-being to a degree. I mean, the easiest thing could be that you say you work 4-hour shifts like air traffic controllers, but that makes it really difficult when it comes to continuity and making sure that your needs as a patient get handed on appropriately and it doesn't get lost in the grapevine. So yeah, we tend to do really long days.
Being a part-time researcher and a part-time anaesthetist, you it seemed to me have a rich moment to stand back and see both sides of the paddock, so to speak. And I recall a conversation we had some months ago where you said that in medicine it takes about, was it 12 to 15 years
About that, yeah.
for new practices to become mainstream. Am I recalling it accurately?
Yeah, there's actually been research that's looked sort of retrospectively and said, here's some of the key publications that have actually happened in what we're currently doing, and kind of looking at that average timeline of how things actually work. It's really slow.
Is it 12 to 15 years?
Oh yeah, right around the 15, sometimes 17-year mark, yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, if you look at like my career, 20, 30 years, which means that the stuff that I'm starting out with, which is cutting edge, is probably stuff that they've been researching and figuring out about 20 years before. And all the stuff that I'm researching now, I'll be retired before it actually makes a difference and a change.
So
if it's going to make a change.
So to end on not a dismal note, but a cautionary note, can we speed this up?
You can, but I'll give you an example that's, again, relevant, kind of circling back. The fastest we'd ever developed a vaccine prior to what we're currently dealing with was for mumps. That took about 4 years. And that was pretty fast at the time. And that was going through all the normal regulatory channels. And if you look at a lot of the pushback we've gotten from people where in the beginning they were desperate for development of a vaccine for the coronavirus we're dealing with. And then when it comes out, you get people that turn around and say, well, that was pretty quick, wasn't it? So some of the time can be sped up by minimizing inefficiency, but then there is a certain amount of time you need just to vet things because you don't want to change things too quickly. Now, where that is in the middle, I don't know. Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Are there some that can be quicker?
It would vary, surely, according to the ill that's sought to be remedied.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, I'll always look at my doctor when I go to see him and ask if there's anything that's novel on the horizon that can help me out. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Could you... Our next guest is Elina Godwin. Hello, Elina.
Hi.
You haven't come very far for this, have you?
Just upstairs.
All right. Well, thanks for coming down into ground level Chippendale. Tell us about where you live.
So I just live upstairs from Knox Street Bar, which is where we are right now, on the top floor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great, but the stairs are really tough sometimes. It's 3 flights of stairs, and everyone who lives here, even my friends when they come to visit, their legs really hurt by the time.
Right. Is this your only problem in life, the stairs?
It'd be good if it was, wouldn't it? I think so, maybe.
So, what do you do here other than live above where you and I are sitting?
Well, I'm a sound designer and a musician. Sometimes I make podcasts, and I also work on this production team for all the events here at Knox Live. And then I have an accounting job 3 days a week at a private company. So that's the other side of my brain, I guess, the accounting versus the creative stuff. And also running events. Yeah.
I am glad we've got a little thumbnail of what you do. Are you good to yourself, young lady? Do you give yourself too much to do?
Definitely. Definitely too much on at the moment. But I also can't sit still.
Right.
I don't really like to be having nothing on or to be doing nothing. I think every time I've got a break or a day that's free, I sort of find a way to busy myself. And I love saying yes to everything.
Right. Well, unfortunately for you, but fortunately for me, you said yes to being the accountant for my little baby project, Cool Seats, where we're putting seats in Chippendale and in Bathurst to take cafe food waste and stop pollution. And I want to thank you for doing this, counting, because I can't count. Tell me, how does somebody become an accountant and do all the things that are, to me, non-accounting, you know, with music and theatre and production and so on? Are you driven there by accounting, or how does this happen?
I think if you look at high school, a lot of the music kids were maths kids as well. And there's an interesting mathematical pattern that's in, if you study classical music, it is really mathematical and it is patterns, just like maths. So I think it's not surprising that you do both. But in saying that, accounting is not a whole lot of maths. You sort of use Excel to do the maths for you. It's not a lot of calculations manually in your head. It's actually abstract debits and credits. That getting your head around that is quite abstract. And I think music is pretty abstract, and art. Like when you make a podcast and you put some music under it, you don't want to, or some sound design under it, you don't want to illustrate the thing that the person's exactly saying. Like if they're talking about drinking their coffee, you don't have the sound of someone drinking the coffee because they've already said that. And so maybe some abstract sound that convey mood would fit well in there instead.
Right. Gosh,
I think I just went like way off the tangent there on the question. So that's how my brain works. It just jumps from topic to topic.
I forgive you. I don't know about our listeners and watchers, but last night I think you were up to midnight doing a show here, weren't you?
Yeah, we had a little dance show in here. It's great.
Breakout time, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's strange, isn't it?
To be dancing again?
And to be seeing other people.
It is, but it's such a relief. Like after last weekend, it was the first weekend I went out and saw my friends. I was so tired on Monday, but my brain felt a lot better from having seen everyone and gone out and realised you work this hard at home all the time so that you can go out and have experiences with people. And we haven't had any experiences with anyone for so long. So it's kind of like, what am I living for here if you're locked in?
Has it been tough for you?
Yeah, I had some really tough times in the middle. And then when I started this DJ dance live stream event in the middle of lockdown, so there was no one here, it was just me and the DJs, and we were filming it. It's just my own private dance party. That gave me some creative energy, and just putting that creative energy out at the DJs, and then they reflected off you, and then you can kind of bounce the energy around, and it lifted me up out of just being in a bit of a hole and just wondering, what are we doing? Everyone seems to be questioning their choices of what they're choosing to do with their lives in the last couple of years.
You're talking of your friends?
Yeah, a lot of people I know. There's a lot of movements between people moving to different jobs or just deciding they don't want to do this job anymore, they don't want to spend their time. It's definitely given people a different perspective.
And what different perspective do you have now?
I'm still doing all the things I intended to do before the lockdowns. The only thing is the idea of living overseas for a while, or, you know, travel's obviously off the cards, but the idea of moving overseas and working there also seems more difficult. And then, because it's just been so tough being close to family and friends that you love, to move away from them at this point, I'm not sure that would be the smartest decision. but I think a lot of people in their 20s want to try and live overseas and work overseas. And it's a good thing to do because then you can come back and it's on your resume and you've had an experience.
Have your friends said the same thing about what's different for them? Are they saying the same thing you've just said to me?
Yeah. Yeah, I had lots of phone calls with friends. I have one friend who says she would have moved overseas and worked there for a while. I have some other friends who went a few years ago and they said it was the best decision they'd made and they're glad they did it when they did it. But now they miss living in London, of course. So they got back to Sydney and Sydney got locked down and they thought, oh damn, should have stayed overseas. Not to say it would have been any better there.
It's true, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been able to do some work during the virus because you could work from home.
Yes, I could work from home with my accounting job, and I'm studying my chartered accountancy as well, so I had plenty of study to do. And a lot of people say, that's a great time to do study, there's nothing going on, you're not going to be distracted. But when your routine is just work, study, daily walk, like I'm sick of the daily walk. Force yourself out to walk around the block and you get kind of grumpy about it. Couldn't go swimming, running around the cities a bit. I'm not a runner, but I couldn't imagine I would want to run around all the concrete around here much. And I got really sick of Pilates videos on the computer. I can't do any more online Pilates or yoga.
What about your friends? Were they able to work and stay afloat financially, or have there been some problems?
My group of friends everyone was really lucky. They all had their jobs and they were all able to work from home, or they were able to get the support payments, the emergency ones.
And for some of those friends, did they achieve that because if they were employed, the employers helped them work at home, or the work was of a kind where you could work from home?
A lot of office work. I have one friend who's a podiatrist and she still had to go out. So she works at a lot of nursing homes and house call visits, and she was still able to go out and do that because that's an essential service. And for the rest of my friends, most of us are at a computer desk all day, and so it is easy to just have that computer at home. Everyone's on Teams meetings or phone calls to communicate with their company, but it's not the same.
No. Have you had conversations with your friends about how they feel about themselves now we're coming out of lockdown in New South Wales?
Like in terms of just mentally, or?
Yeah, whether or not. So there was a life before the virus, a life during the virus, and now this new life, we hope, we don't know, after the virus.
Yeah, but we're all almost 2 years older.
Yeah.
Supposedly 2 years more mature.
And have you talked with your friends about what changes they've made, or?
Not really. I think everyone's in a bit of shock, maybe. They just kind of want to try and resume with normal life. And then I feel like next year, assuming we don't go back into another lockdown, then people might start to think about what changes they want to make or where they want to go and talk about it a bit more. But no, it's really hard to set goals when you don't know when you can do that goal.
Is this a way of mirroring back what you've just said? Some people that you know have done a race that they've never done before. The race is over. They're still breathing heavily and wondering what that race was about. And you have had conversations where you generally agree we're all up in air about how we're going to deal with the world from here on in. Are they, I guess I'm asking, are they more uncertain about what lies ahead?
I think everyone's had a bit of security. All my friends have had security in their jobs. I think if you lost your job, then you would be really uncertain and really confused about what you want to keep doing and rethinking everything. I think it's sort of like for me and my friends, like we've just been holding our breath, waiting to get through to the other side. and it feels like you've kind of been on a holiday, or like a long school holiday, except you're really burnt out from it. And it's almost like, to prepare for coming out of lockdown, I needed another little lockdown just with no work happening, so we could organize all the stuff, because everyone just said, oh, we're out, let's do everything all at once. And it's just take a breath. Let's ease back into it, and we're about to go into Christmas season.
Yeah. I was here last night when the bar was open, and there was a general sense of goodwill between strangers, and a willingness to say hello, how are you, nice to see you. And there's a sense of relief, I guess, and also of a bit more caring for perfect strangers that I sensed last night, at least here. I don't know generally. Are your friends making similar observations?
Yeah, I think when someone doesn't reply to you for a few days, that's becoming more common, and you sort of just don't take it personally. I think, you know, if someone ignored your message, your first instinct might to think, oh, they don't care about me, they ignore my message. But it's actually just probably because they were mentally in another space, and they needed to introvert and hide away, and they'll come back to you, and all you can say is like, hey, are you okay? And like, I'm here if you need me, but also no pressure to do this thing.
So, last question. How do you feel about the future? Do you feel, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, how do you feel about the future?
I'm a pretty optimistic person, but I think we've been so distracted by COVID-19 that we haven't paid much attention to all the other things going on in the world that are on fire.
I've got 10 fingers, give me one or two.
Climate change.
Yeah.
Is that it? Is that the main one? I think that's the main thing. I guess, have they fixed the problems with the fires yet? The fact that, like, if the fires come back for another season, do we have a better plan in place this time? Because nobody's mentioned it, because we came out of the fire season and went straight into COVID-19 and just kind of forgot how horrendous that was.
Yeah, I have some stories to tell you when we next talk. Will you come back and try and stay awake and talk to me again?
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Well, thanks for coming. It's been lovely to talk to you.